Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. I do want to switch gears and hit on something that I do think if this was a busier Monday Aaron Torres pod, if there was other stuff, other big results outside of that Oregon and UCLA, the two games late night on Saturday, I don't know if we would get to this, but I do want to talk about two teams and two programs specifically. And I want to have an honest conversation about them. And I do think sometimes, I listen to some other shows, different people, different like one thing you could say about me, you can like me, you can dislike me, you can agree, you can disagree. But at the end of the day, I tell you how I feel. I have strong opinions, strong convictions, and I think it's time to have a big boy, real conversation about two teams and two programs, both of which are heading in one direction in a very fast way, one up and one down. The two teams really played, games that really didn't necessarily move the needle a ton this weekend. The first one was the USC Trojans. They played Friday night in the LA Coliseum against Colorado. I'll be blunt. I'm not going to sit here and break the game down and pretend like there's a million takeaways. And on third down in the third quarter with 11 minutes left, this is what happened. It's like, no, that's not what we're about to do right now. I don't know that there's a ton to take away from USC Colorado, but I do think in the totality of the season for USC, I do think there is a pretty big picture takeaway. And that's that USC is awesome. They're 9-1. They enter this week as the only team in the Pac-12 with playoff hopes. Lincoln Riley, I think, has exceeded expectations. I think we all thought maybe in a best case scenario, you go 10-2, 9-3. Well, they're at 9-1. Don't know if they're going to win out. But even if they don't win out, even if they don't make the college football playoff, and I don't think they will, I think we got to give Lincoln Riley credit because I do think he has this program ahead of schedule, and he came to USC to build a national championship contender, and I believe he is well on his way to doing that. Then, of course, there's another team that you probably didn't even know played on Saturday. That was the team that Lincoln Riley left, the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma, they played in a noon Eastern game on FS1 that was buried during a busy time slot with a million different things going on. And if you missed the final score, if you didn't see what happened, here's what you need to know. Oklahoma entered as a really bad Big 12 team. They played a team that was in theory worse than them on the road in West Virginia, and they fell by a final score of 23-20. With it, Oklahoma is now 5-5. They are now 2-5 in the Big 12. And they are looking up, or they're sitting at tied for ninth place. The only team below them is Iowa State. And so what I want to do now is start the conversation and have a big boy conversation. I need to call out one specific group of people. There is a group of people that around this time last year, remember, Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for Oklahoma State after Bedlam. Bedlam is this weekend, so it was a little under a year ago, a little over a year ago, whatever it is, that Lincoln Riley left. And there was a group of people, some Oklahoma fans, I guess probably some people in the national media that were like, good, get rid of Lincoln Riley, let him leave. Oklahoma is going to be better without him. If you were one of those people, it's time for you to take the L. It's time for you to admit you're wrong. And if you are still one of those people that is still arguing that Lincoln Riley was the problem, it is definitely time for you to turn off this podcast to take a lap around the house, because what I'm going to say is the truth. It's going to hurt. And the bottom line is, if you are one of those Oklahoma fans that truly believes that Lincoln Riley was the problem, it is officially time to get over yourself. And really, this entire conversation to me, it does stem from, again, the conversations that happened around this time last year when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for USC. If you remember, the second it happened, there was this narrative of, oh, Lincoln Riley's afraid of the SEC. One, that I cannot personally speak to, okay? I can't tell you what Lincoln Riley's ideas were, why he left, why he didn't leave. I do think that was probably a factor. I've always said I think the more interesting factor was the transfer portal. Forget the SEC. Does he make a move that big if he can't overhaul a roster? But at the end of the day, there was a certain segment of people that said he's afraid of the SEC. I never believed it, but that argument I could at least buy. The argument that I could not buy at any point, however, was this idea that Lincoln Riley was somehow the problem at Oklahoma and that the only way to fix the problem was to get rid of Lincoln Riley. Because of it, I actually think that Brent Venables is getting an incredible pass this year. Nobody is being critical of him, and I simply don't get it. Because when I look at the program that Brent Venables inherited, okay, if your argument is Lincoln Riley is the problem and this thing has to be rebuilt from the ground up, okay, I disagree, but let's just talk this out like adults. Let's have an honest conversation about the Oklahoma program that Lincoln Riley left, that Brent Venables took over, that you said was such a disaster. Here is the truth. Here is the program that Brent Venables took over. 2 of the previous 3 recruiting classes that Lincoln Riley had recruited to Norman were finished top 10 in college football. Okay. So 2 of the previous 3 recruiting classes were in the top 10 in the country. By far the best recruiting anyone was doing in the Big 12 outside of Texas. The class that Lincoln Riley left in 2022, which to Brent Venables' credit, he mostly closed out, finished as a top 10 class in college football. Oh, by the way, this narrative that Lincoln Riley took everybody with him and Brent Venables had this bare bones roster, it's just not true. Yes, Lincoln Riley took Caleb Williams with him. Yes, Caleb Williams is awesome. But at the end of the day, you know who Lincoln Riley took to USC from Oklahoma outside of Caleb Williams? The 4th leading receiver, Mario Williams, a backup corner named Latrell McCutcheon, and that's basically it. Now, Oklahoma did lose some other guys to the portal and 2 other schools. Jaden Hazelwood to Arkansas, Spencer Rattler to South Carolina, Austin Stogner to South Carolina. But part of that's on Brent Venables and part of that's on the Oklahoma administration. Took him a while to replace Lincoln Riley. Those guys are already in the portal. Those guys are making decisions. That's kind of on Brent Venables to re-recruit them and convince them to come back. Instead, a couple players leave. Lincoln Riley gets the blame. And here's the other part about the roster that Lincoln Riley or that Brent Venables inherited. The truth is that, by the way, 1, it was better than people give it credit for. 2, it was less pillage than people want to give it credit for by Lincoln Riley and others. Here's the other part that I can't get over. The transfer portal works both ways. Like, it's not as though the transfer portal didn't, Oklahoma didn't have access to the transfer portal like everybody else did. And so that, to me, is why I continue to be amazed why Brent Venables gets to pass. Listen, I get if you don't think he should win a national championship in year 1, I'm with it. I get it. I get new coach, new culture, new this, new that. It takes time, all that good stuff. But what I can't get with is a couple things. 1, he was supposed to come in and fix the defense. The defense is actually statistically worse than it was last year. We've talked about it before, and I've gone over it before. They are currently ranked, as we record here on a Sunday into Monday, they are currently ranked 109th nationally in total defense in terms of yards allowed, and 94th in scoring defense in terms of points allowed. So don't tell me that this guy came in to fix the defense and it's somehow worse. But here's the other part, and here's why I have zero sympathy for Brent Venables and zero sympathy for any Oklahoma fan that is not willing to criticize him at all. Have you seen what all these other first-year head coaches are doing? And the bottom line is, in the portal era, it's just less of an excuse to be really bad right away. And it's less of an excuse to say, oh, we need 3-4 years to get our guys in and rebuild, and the culture was a mess. Well, culture was a mess at LSU too. Brian Kelly hasn't playing for an SEC title in 2 weeks. They clinched the SEC West on Saturday. By the way, Sonny Dykes, in your own conference, first-year head coach, just is going to play for a Big 12 title. Don't know if he'll win it. Don't know if he'll make a playoff. But he's going to win 10 games in his first year at TCU. My alma mater, we're talking about Jim Moore in a minute. 4-32 in the previous 4 years before he took over. They're 6-5. They beat Liberty. They're going to a bowl game. I think he should get National Coach of the Year votes. I don't know if I'd give it to him ahead of Josh Heupel. I don't know if I'd give it to him ahead of Brian Kelly, but he's in the short conversation. So don't tell me that it takes forever. And Coach Brent Venables just needs time. Brent Venables is the only coach in the country that needs time, apparently. By the way, you know who was a coach who inherited a much worse situation than Brent Venables? Lincoln freaking Riley at USC. Lincoln Riley, think about how bad, like I still think that what Lincoln Riley's doing is kind of sort of being underrated on the national scale. I know it's the Pac-12. I know the competition isn't great, but I'll tell you this, the Pac-12 is better than the ACC this year. I can tell you that. The Pac-12, I would say from 1 to 12, top to bottom, is unquestionably better than the Big Ten this year. Now, I don't think anybody is as good as Ohio State or Michigan, but I think you get to 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. The Pac-12 is probably better. So Lincoln Riley walks into a conference. It's not tough. I'm not saying it's the SEC West, but I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world ever. And he's got them at 9-1 overall. This a team that finished 4-8 last year, a team that lost by 29 to UCLA, by 18 to Oregon State at home, by 16 to Utah at home, all of a sudden now is 9-1 and playing for a Pac-12, potentially, if they win next week, they'll obviously play for a Pac-12 title. They would play for potentially to go to the college football playoff, all that good stuff. Now, again, I'm not saying two things here. One thing, and I want to make clear, I'm not saying Oklahoma needs to fire Brent Venables. Now, I've made that case before. I think they should think about it because I don't think the defense should be this bad this quick. It's not going to happen, though, just like Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M is not going to happen. So I'm not saying they fire Brent Venables. And I'm not saying that Lincoln Riley has all the answers and USC is going to make a playoff and they're going to beat Georgia to win a title. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying, though, is this. If you're an Oklahoma fan that is still blaming Lincoln Riley, a couple things, even before that. If you take two things out of this segment, this is it. If you're an Oklahoma fan that truly believes that Brent Venables still needs time, okay, I disagree with you, but I get it. But the point of this segment is to say Lincoln Riley is ahead of schedule at USC. They look better than they should at this point. And if you are still an Oklahoma fan that truly believes that Lincoln Riley was the problem, it's time to get over yourself. It's time to look in the mirror. And it's time to ask some questions about that coach that has you at 5-5. This isn't September 11th anymore, September 14th, September 27th, whatever. It is November 14th, and you're fighting just to get to a bowl game. It's really bad, and it's time to stop blaming the coach that you used to have and start blaming the coach a little bit that is currently there. All right, so what I want to do, take a quick break, come back, look at the rest of the week. What is it, 11? College football? I can't believe it's week 11. We'll talk my UConn Huskies. I want to talk Mark Stoops, man. I'm a little bit disappointed in him, the effort that we got, and some other odds and ends from across college football. Take a quick break. Be right back.